So for the very last time, I've popped the old windows back into the boat, and this time I just use regular masking tape because I know it'll come off without leaving residue and sticking. And so this is the last time, and the primary reason is I'm not so much worried about getting water inside the boat as I wash this thing, but more inside the walls. I don't really want to fill the walls with water, so hopefully this will keep most of the water out of the walls. And now I can thoroughly wash from top to bottom every square inch of this thing, and as soon as it's washed and dried, we're going to start taping off for painting. So that's exciting.
A new place, a new home, for a while, let me feel alive. Nothing to hold me back, take my time, just enjoy the ride. A new man passing by, life is good, best I've ever felt.
I should have worn my gloves. Dang it. This could get real messy. I wonder if we should put a little clamp right here. Seems like a little bit of separation. If it's pretty minor. Really, it's pretty dang good. And down here looks brilliant. I mean, I might have clamped that all the way together, but it felt like that actually kind of kept it more straight in line. I don't know. So I took these clamps off a little early and things started to separate again, so I just put them back on. But I was just noticing this wood looks so beautiful. Fortunately, this is the wood that is covered by the metal trim, so fortunately no one's going to see it. I don't technically have to tape this section off because, I mean, technically you can paint over, but when you do the second color, but I want to stay true to the original wood grain, so that's why I'm using the pinstripe tape. And then we'll do the flat black, and then when the flat black's done, we'll pull that and we'll have a perfect line matching the original wood grain, and then I'll tape it back the other way and stay true to that line. So that's why I'm spending the time on this. So I'm all ready to start painting, and this side of the boat's in the sun, and it's such an interesting experiment because this brown color is almost so hot I can't touch it. It's literally like almost burns me, and this white is nice and cool. And so it's just kind of a little lesson learned that, you know, if the point is to keep it cool, the color makes a huge difference to something, you know, like an RV or a boat. I don't think it's going to change my plan per se, but yeah, I'm planning to paint this black, and I'm like, it's going to be equally hot probably to this brown, if not hotter, but oh well. Problem, of course, is that it's freaking windy as heck. I mean, I really need to get painting, and my time is running short, and all kinds of stuff blowing around. It's pine needles like crazy. It's super difficult to paint. and not have a bunch of crap falling in your paint. So I know they say paint is cheap when you're boat shopping, and I still always kind of believe in that. When you're looking at a boat, there's so much more that could be way more devastating. Paint is usually pretty cheap, but that would be true for the past 50 years of paint they put on this boat. But I'll tell you what, this project this summer, this is not cheap, because I'm taking off all the 50 years of paint and refinishing all the fiberglass like new, and then not only that, but I'm doing a very kind of specialized paint job with taping out these old patterns from the reminiscent of the old boat paint, and I plan to actually recreate the original stripe that was on the flybridge. There was a blue stripe, and no, I'm not 100% on that, because it does have some fresh paint on it that I did last year, but I didn't really prep last year. I didn't sand that all the way down before I put that paint on there. So that means I just added to the years of paint. And so I don't know if I want to add another layer of paint to that even. I might, just because it would look cool, but knowing that someday this flybridge will have to be completely sanded down. But oh well, that's a thought. I'm going to concentrate right now on getting the blue paint that's going on here. Instead of recreating the original stripe, which out of the factory was gold and out of the dealership that sold this was blue, because the dealership immediately repainted it. I'm not going to recreate that original stripe. I'm going to just do this whole section in blue, and it's a deeper blue than they did from the factory, or from the dealership actually. So yeah, this has been unbelievable amount of work, and I'm getting down to the end of the paint job. I'm super excited. As soon as I'm happy with this black, I don't know if I want a third coat on it, then I peel the paint and back tape it the other way, and I'm ready to paint the blue on. So yeah, that's where we're at, and getting excited for the finish. I just learned a lesson about this foam. Look at what it did to this door. Totally bulged it out. Like that foam expanded with a lot of force, and so yeah, I have to try to cut that out of there. Had I realized what kind of force this could exert, I would have not done that way, or I would have clamped it shut or something. That's crazy. So the kind of disadvantage of using flat black is that you accentuate every imperfection. But and with that, I think that a high build primer would have been a smart thing to put on here before, although it isn't required with this paint. And so essentially what I'm going to do is I'm going to call this first coat of paint like a primer, and with this paint you sand between coats anyways, and I'm hopeful that when I sand this paint down, I'm not going to sand it. You sand it at 220. You don't get too crazy with it, just a light sanding to scuff it up. I'm hoping that with the second coat, that spotchiness will disappear. That's my hope. And I think it's going to be easier to go ahead and do this second coat now, even though I have to then clean the dust up everywhere, rather than try to untape this and then paint the blue and then sand it all. I'm going to just sand this right now, and then put another coat on here. So just a quick sanding, and I use the power sander. I could hand sand it, but I feel like the power sander is so smooth and consistent, and so I just run over it, briefly with that, and the splotchiness is almost completely gone, just lightly sanding it. So I think that, and you can see it just got back through the fiberglass for that spot right there. It's probably kind of a slightly high spot or something right there. Maybe, I don't think I ran the sander too long on that spot, but I really like this surface that we got here. It's super consistent. It's like a primer almost. So yeah, so I'll be excited to put one more coat of black on here and then see what it looks like. So the black paint is looking better with the second coat. It looks pretty good, but I'm definitely going to do a third coat on that. But unfortunately, it's just not very fast curing around here because of the weather. So I've got to probably wait another day to put a third coat on this. Problem is rain's coming in a couple days, so I really want to get these new windows in. So I'm thinking about doing the blue paint because it's going to be a lot of things to work around. It's going to take a little while to paint. So I think what I'm going to do is paint the blue and stop it somewhere back here. But the problem is when you stop painting and pick up again, it's hard to hide that joint. So there's really no way to win this because I want to be able to get the windows in. So I'm just going to stop it somewhere in here, and then we're just going to have to feather it in, and when I pick up and finish painting, I feather it in and pick it up halfway. I think that's the best option. So I'm very happy with the sanding on this. It actually looks really good. In that I don't see many imperfections or like blotchiness or anything like that. And then the other side maybe even better. This is the side I was experimenting with, the 320, and now I've just sanded it all down to 220, but same thing over here now, that just in a few little spots just starting to hint at the old surface. And those were the kind of the highest points in the previous sanding. And so, some little lessons learned I can point out here real quick. I left kind of intentionally, like right here you see these little tiny pits. When I was working and up there a little bit, there was a few spots that in the fairing, like when I was sanding the fairing, that was a little pitted, and just for the sake of time crunch, I needed to get this thing moving along before, I'm running out of time here. So I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna have to live with the little pitted areas. And I think the paint does tend to want to fill those little pits in. I was kind of counting on that, but it doesn't always and doesn't fully. So there may be some tiny little pitted spots in the end, just maybe one or two little tiny spots, but so that's a little disappointing. But really 99.9% it's really smooth and nice. These were the really challenging spots to begin with, and of course I chose to do the really challenging finish. I don't know why I did that. I'm kind of, in hindsight, kind of crazy to think to take the hardest spot that I started with, which was the most cracked up and the most coats of paint, the most difficult area, most uneven surface, and figure that I'm going to put a flat black paint on it. I don't know where I got that idea from. Make it as hard as possible on myself, but anyway, I really feel like that I've got now a really nice surface. Third coat is my goal, is to make that the final coat here, and then thin it out, do a real careful job rolling it, and have a nice finish. That's the goal. And then the only other thing that is kind of a lesson or a challenge is, since this isn't the thickness of this paint is something you roll on, I did want to keep a perfect line if I could, which is why I wanted to just finish this color before I pulled the tape. Now I did use that really strong pinstriping tape to do the edge, and I'm hoping that that's a good choice, but it makes it hard to sand right up to the edge. So I'm kind of wondering, when we pull the tape, what the edge is going to look like, and how to deal with that. So this is a technique where you do multiple colors, where usually you spray paint. It's a thinner paint, and you can kind of overlap, and it's not noticeable. This paint's so thick, I'm not sure how this is going to turn out. So how's the paint line going to look, and how am I going to work with that? This is a learning experience, but I guess we'll figure it out together. Now it's time for me to start sanding the white up on top, but it's so moist, it's like misty almost, and it's wet, and I just dried it off and it's wet again, and just like from the air, it's like too humid and too moist, so it's making it a little bit challenging to sand. This blue is almost ready for its sanding and second coat, but actually this side feels pretty dry, so I'm really close. I mean, probably by this afternoon I'm ready for the sanding on this, so it's ready for its second coat, and keeping fingers crossed that this only needs 2 coats. I think that'll be enough. I mean, it looks pretty dang good on 1 coat, but we'll see. Another dark color, of course, so it might be like the black where I have to do 3 coats. But anyway, I'm gonna stay on it and hopefully get this white all sanded as soon as it's dry enough, which another hour or 2 should be. And then by this afternoon, when it's the warmest and driest it can be, then I'll sand this blue down. And then this afternoon, I'll paint the third coat on the black. Also, when it's warm and the paint's happiest, that'll be the time to do that, because I noticed that the paint wants to be thicker when it's colder, and then you get more brush strokes and everything else, or more lines from the roller. So at the warmest point today, the afternoon sun will hit this, so not when it's blazing hot, of course, but I'm gonna find that perfect time today to get that painted. So just an interesting footnote, if someone were thinking to do some sort of a clear coat on this paint, this black that I've sanded down to 220 when it's wet, has just an awesome look to it. I mean, it's super smooth. It could be sanded to 320. I mean, when it's sanded down, it is super nice. Of course, when it dries, it looks kind of chalky, but I was just thinking, if someone was thinking to do a clear coat over a paint like this, that's an idea. I don't know if they intend this paint to be used like that, but I was just looking at this going, wow. I wanted kind of a flat look, but I could put like a satin clear or something on this, would look really cool. So anyway, just a footnote. As it's drying, you can see it dries to like chalky, but not a problem. I'm just painting a third coat on it. But anyway, footnote. In fact, if I don't like my third coat, there's an option for me maybe. Hey everybody, cheers. So happy. The black's not even dry yet, and it's looking so good. So happy. That was obviously the part I was most worried about. Good. And white's finished also. There's only one defect in the white. Of course, it's right back here toward the back deck where everyone will see it, but oh well. I'm living with that. But yeah, it's still drying up here, but yeah, not even dry yet. It's looking amazing. Yeah, I'm super excited about that. And then the blue, I'm just gonna wait to sand it till I'm absolutely certain that it's totally cured it. I don't want to have a gooey mess trying to sand it and I'm not going to try to rush it because the blue is going to look amazing also, I'm sure. Sand it real good, and now as soon as this black's dry, I can back tape that line again and be ready to put blue on the rest of this. So yeah, we're getting dang close, so I'm celebrating right now. Yeah, super happy. So I'm starting to sand this first coat of blue that I did, and sanding a little more aggressively on the edge here since I need to pick up and paint the rest of this still. Hopefully not see any sort of joint there. But one thing that I've learned doing this black, which isn't totally flawless, but it's pretty good. One thing I learned about doing the black, which really can apply to all this paint, is that putting it on thicker, it really is no benefit. I put this blue on pretty dang thick, and what I learned on the black is that any sort of like texture imperfection in your finish, you can detect it in the finished paint. Now, maybe not so much in the white. I mean, it's been pretty forgiving for me, but in this dark colors and then in the flat, especially, it's like probably the most noticeable. But you can detect like texture differences. So what I at least like about it is that you can use it like a primer. So this blue I put on pretty thick. I'm sanding it pretty aggressively, and I don't care if I even get back to the original, get all the way through it, because essentially what it's doing is serving to fill in like the microscopic like low spots, which is super awesome. It's almost like a primer or a filler, because that's kind of how it's behaving. And then by sanding it all the way down, I'm getting to a very consistent texture. That's most important, because any sort of imperfections that you leave, they'll show through on the next coat. So sanding it down until even though the color might not be exactly the same, the texture is almost more important. And the texture feels very consistent through that. I mean, there's now this finish might be a little different than this, so it's not ideal to get all the way through the paint, but that's okay. Even if I have to do 3 coats, it's worth it to just get that really nice finished product at the end. So I'm okay. If it wasn't so thick, I wouldn't have to sand it so much. But I'm gonna end up being in the same place I would have been anyways. I guess it's just more work to sand the extra paint off now to get it down to a nice smooth texture. But yeah, so the good news is that if you don't like it on this paint, you can always sand it down and do it again. So like there's a couple little marks on this flat black back here. There's a couple little marks in the flat black that aren't like noticeable, and I recall that in the texture before I started I could kind of see that, so it carried through. That's how I learned the lesson there. But in the black, I can, anytime I want, even if it's a year later, I could sand it down on 220 and put another coat of paint on it. It'll look beautiful. So that's kind of the nice thing about this. So I know that down the road it won't be a big deal to sand this down and put another coat of paint on it. Of course, the only irritation, of course, is once the windows are in, you're trying to tape around the windows, but at least then the color, like you can tape around the windows and not worry about getting it exactly perfect, and you don't have to sand necessarily right up to the edge because the color's the same. So where now I'm changing the color, it's really a pain to work right around the edge of these windows. Yeah, so I'm thinking I'm just gonna wait a little bit longer before I finish sanding this. It's just not sanding as smoothly as I would like. It's mostly it sands good, but in places where the paint's been completely like out of the sun and got real thick or pulled up at all, it's still almost gooey. It's not quite powdery like you'd want it to be. So yeah, I think I'll just, since I can't paint right away anyway, I'm waiting for the storm to pass, so I think I'll just wait to sand it till right before I'm ready to paint it, because it'll just sand that much nicer and look that much better in the end. So on to different projects until then. But I am getting super excited about it. I love how good this black looks, even though texture wise I could have probably got it a little more perfect. It does look really good. So I know the blue's going to look equally good when I take the care to put it on really nice. And this back, I especially got this on real thick. I mean, it looks beautiful. I could almost just leave it the way it is. I got such a thick coat on there, it looks actually really good, but it isn't absolutely perfect the way I want it. So I'll just let it cure more. When it's really good and cured, then I'll sand it down and get a real nice consistent textured finish on it over the whole thing, and then put a beautiful thin, like a really thin layer of blue on there. Probably I think 2 coats back here, because I think I'll have a pretty good service. I think the 2 coats there, I might need 3. I don't know, we'll see. But it's gonna look primo, I'm sure. I'm already so happy with the white because I put a nice thin coat of white, a thin coat of white on the top, and if that were a darker color, maybe I wouldn't like it so much. And it's not as like glassy smooth like this. Black is really got a nice smooth texture. The white on the top's a little more rippled, like it was put on a little thicker, but honestly, for where it's at on the roof of the boat, I like it a lot. It looks really good too. So yeah. So I am going to put the old windows back in the boat one more time because 2 reasons. One reason is obviously I'm not ready 100%. The black I'm going to just live with, but obviously I'm not ready on the blue. But also I'm not ready on the inside because I'm hoping to have time to do a little bit more work on the inside, which would include a little bit of sanding and painting on the inside. I'm just going to do a coat of paint around the inside where the windows are going to mount so that the the correct future, finished paint color will be under the window frames. And I don't want to put the new windows in and risk them falling out when they're not fully installed. So the old ones I'm not worried about. I'll stick them in there, and if they fall out, they fall out. Who cares? And break. They're already a couple got cracked just from leaving them laying around, so I'm not even worried about the old ones. And then if they get dusty, because I'm thinking I might do one more round of sanding inside if I can find time for it. If they get dusty, then I can just not worry about it. So new ones will stay clean and protected until, or 100% finished, and then stick them in and screw the frames on the inside in and be done with it.